Viva la farce! The French go silly again as protesters take to the streets about something they think is important or something.
A follow-up on the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, we ask all the hard questions of why Seymour Hersh was wrong about American involvement.
Larry Fillmore at WokeBet gives us the latest odds on a new financial crisis as US banks are wiped out.
And all the behind-the-scenes gossip as we go ringside at the 95th Academy Awards.
Slapping out the people who aren't in formation with you. Information News Network with Brian Sockington and Sandy Hosier.
And stay with us as Joe Socking takes you inside the brutal world of professional slap fighting. Live from the birthplace of the sport, the 95th Academy Awards.
And the world's #1 sock puppet meteorologist Jane Bunyan summarizes the IPCC's 6th climate change report.
It seems the French have gone mad again, tearing up their own streets for the 4th day in a row, in protest against the Macron government they elected for a second term just under a year ago. The mainstream media say it was a decision to raise the retirement age from 62 years to 64 that motivated citizens to set fire to their cities. So, is this another bout of French silliness, or could there be some other unresolved factors behind the unrest that French citizens have been trying to spell out for years? James Plushfoot attempts to find out.
It started with another captain's call from French President Emmanuel Macron, raising the national retirement age from 62 to 64 through an executive order, bypassing the consensus of his National Assembly by invoking an obscure clause within the French constitution. This sparked wild protests both inside and outside of French Parliament, political opponents roaring their national anthem in defiance, while epic riots sprawled onto French streets. This garbage strike left Paris and other French cities in filth, while rioters in Bordeaux set fire to their city hall. Chaos reigned as police struggled to contain the relentless anger. But what exactly do these people want? And why won't they just go away?
Go away or I shall taunt you a second time!
We offered this group a chance to explain themselves, receiving this familiar noise in response. It's no wonder President Macron can't understand what the protesters want, such as the estimated 500,000 people at this rally, or precisely 107,000 according to Macron's interior minister. It's an issue that has plagued large-scale protests throughout Macron's 6 years in power, but from what I've been able to piece together, they started immediately after his election in 2017. Unions went on strike over Macron policies that threatened French workers, including their taxi and wine industries. Socialists were upset that Macron wasn't socialist enough, and by 2018, hundreds of thousands were protesting Macron's reform agenda, which rolled into the Yellow Vest movement of 2019, calling for better living standards and a wealth tax. A general strike shut down the country, before anger turned to violence in 2020 over increased police brutality and the new laws that aided it. COVID momentarily paused Macron protesters, before returning in their millions to protest his vaccine health passports, which were later scrapped and considered unethical. Of course, this led to Macron being re-elected in 2022, and the resumption of protests over high inflation, immigration, and the cost of living. But it wasn't easy to figure all that out, which is why the media often resorts to poking fun at the French for their lack of work ethic and fierce defense of their culture and rights. Things that resonate with the average Joe, people like INN's own Joe Socking and The Drudge, who also find it difficult to understand why the French aren't in formation with everyone else.
Oh, lazy frog eaters, eh, The Drudge? Oh, the French, mate, keep up. They're on extended smoko again, bludging, carrying on about the retirement age going up 2 years. Well, good on 'em. Pull your finger out, Stalin. Why shouldn't they be on the tools for a few more years like the rest of us? Course I'm right. I'm no pinko commie, mate. I got no problem with work. Course you don't. And you're doing alright. What are you, 80 or something? 28? Jesus, the drudge. Are you stressed out at home or something? Well, why don't you get one then? You just need a bit of overtime, mate. You'll be right. Once we get a centrist third-way politician in like Macron, guess who wins? We all will, mate. What do you want? Your rights or some more money? Here we go. You want everything, just like the French. Hard times are good times, the drudge. Just trust your leaders, mate, and you'll come out on top in the end. Look, mate, I don't know. Could I bum a cigarette off you? I'm out again.
Perhaps it's only through these one-on-one interactions that we gain insight into the issues these shouting, unintelligible masses face in France and around the world. But it would be great if someone could articulate a plan, because at this stage I won't be able to retire until I'm about 80. James Plushfoot, INN News.
To his credit, President Macron continues to look at the bigger picture, rather than the consistent and desperate calls for change across his country. Although similar French-inspired protests have been reported recently in countries around the world, including these ones. Bunch of bludging, whinging, hedonist socialists, all of them.
Let's revisit the serious and mysterious sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline, the 1,200-kilometer, $9.8 billion Russian-backed gas distributor extending from Russia through to Germany. You might remember that they were blown up in November last year, causing an ecological catastrophe and a huge financial and political windfall for rivals to Russia's energy infrastructure. Esteemed journalist Seymour Hersh...
Esteemed? He's not esteemed. He's a kook. You're not on yet, Tony.
Hold on, Tony. Hersh published a controversial article titled How America Took Out the Nord Stream Pipeline.
What a load of crap.
Which has left many experts baffled as to what exactly the journalist was trying to say.
God, who knows?
We've managed to track down expert political analyst Tony Nito again, to help us decipher the cryptic message, although I won't be giving away your secret location like Brian did last time.
Oh, that's alright. I'm just in the lounge room, mate.
It's just that there's no footage coming through.
Oh, well, I put duct tape over the camera to protect myself from surveillance, but I can't get the bloody stuff off now.
Right, we'll just put those wavy lines up again. Anyway, let's begin with the latest fascinating revelations about journalist Seymour Hersh.
Journalist? This was a blog post from a washed-up anti-American old hack who was last relevant when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Right, well, the article published on Substack looks credible.
Credible.
Although it was way too long for me to read.
Yeah, that'd be right.
But the general idea is pretty obvious in the title, right?
What, how America took out Nord Stream? What do you mean, on a date? How about burying the lead a bit, Seymour? People might be more interested in reading your long-winded, crappy articles if you don't spoil the plot in the headline, stupid.
Yes, but the question is whether there's any merit in the article.
Nah, the question is how this unpatriotic fossil can sleep at night and how quickly we can discredit the nut job.
Well, it can't be easy discrediting a man who's won a Pulitzer Prize, 5 George Polk Awards, 2 National Magazine Awards, and more than a dozen other prizes for his journalism.
Yes, it is. Easy peasy. We're doing it right now, Sandy. Anyone can rack up a few awards, even this show. But look where Seymour Hersh is now, writing lies on Substack just as bad as those Twitter and Pfizer files.
Well, because nobody else would publish them.
Well, maybe nobody wants to read it.
Well, I presume you have to, so perhaps you could reassure the rest of us that there's definitely no merit
There
in
isn't.
the idea that America was involved in destroying this Russian pipeline
They're
to
not.
ensure their EU and NATO allies could control the flow of energy into Europe.
That had nothing to do with it. And I haven't actually read the article because I'm not paying for a subscription for it.
It's free, Tony. I'm looking at it now, and it actually seems there's quite a lot of evidence in there.
Oh,
Listen to
sure.
this quote from the article.
Do I have to?
Last June, Navy divers operating under the cover of a widely publicized NATO exercise known as Baltops 22
Oh, God.
planted remotely triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline.
Oh, lies. Obvious lies.
From its earliest days, Nord Stream was seen by Washington and its anti-Russian NATO partners as a threat to Western dominance.
Bull crap.
The direct route bypassed Ukraine and was a boon to the German economy. Putin had a major source of income, and Western Europe was addicted to the low-cost natural gas supplied by Russia, diminishing European reliance on America.
Tony? Tony, are you there? It seems we've lost Tony, but I wonder if we could get a guy with a lot of military badges to just do what Tony was booked to do.
We still do believe it was an act of sabotage. The United States was not involved in any way, contrary to some press reporting out there.
That's perfect, the Drudge. Very reassuring. Thank you.
Financial investment decisions can often be a gamble, and with 3 of the 5 largest bank collapses in American history occurring in just the last few weeks, who better than INN's Larry Fillmore over at WokeBet to talk us through all the likely repercussions?
WokeBet.
Larry, some of my people are saying we're odds on for a new global financial crisis. How much can I make on that bet?
Well, sign up for a WokeBet account today, Brian, and find out. And remember, your first bet's on us. Unless you win, of course. Worsen conditions apply, and always gamble responsibly. Anyway, there's a heap of money coming in from Conservatives today, like James Comer, Ron DeSantis and Tucker Carlson, all betting big on woke investment causing the Silicon Bank collapse, which triggered the fall of the Signature and First Republic banks as well. They're the 3rd, 4th and 2nd largest bank failures in US history, respectively, a total of $556 billion in assets down the gurgler. But woke bettors can capitalise on the crisis, with 8-1 odds on another major bank to fail within the week, or a very tasty 20-1 on a 2008-style global financial meltdown within the month, in from 50-1 just last week, Brian.
Good time to be betting against US banks. $66 billion plus failures in just the last 15 years, Larry. And billionaire venture capitalists like Peter Thiel virtually signaling their collapse to punters by suddenly withdrawing all their money.
Oh, Peter will have a lot of friends outside of these banks tonight. He basically exposed Silicon Valley Bank for being short on capital after it started selling its long-term treasury bonds that had lost value as interest rates rose. And when the rich started leaving, you can bet everyone else was moving out too, devastating a bank that had invested heavily in new tech companies and woke progressive movements. I mean, good on 'em and all, but if you ask any punter, they'll say they won't be back in a bank giving away $5 billion to climate advocacy or over $70 million to elevating gender and diversity groups. I mean, they're not a charity, Brian.
Are you sure? I saw a Newsweek article that said companies and corporations had donated over $83 billion to Black Lives Matter and other related groups that labeled themselves as woke. Why haven't those banks and corporations collapsed yet?
Sure, I honestly don't know anymore, mate. But if you give away more money than the GDP of 46 nations in Africa, I'd be logging into my WokeBet account today and putting my money on more collapses.
Sounds like a lock, Larry. I suppose we can bet on governments finding a way to bail out the banks again too, just like 2008.
Well, funnily enough, they're saying taxpayers will avoid the fallout this time, but I'm not sure I trust those cheeky monkeys, and that's why my money's on Wayne Calsetti's special woke bet Taxpayer Catch 22. Take us through it, Wayne. Woke bet. Well, I have a nice little six-legger that's looking very juicy.
Wayne, what are you doing? I can hear you whispering something.
No, I'm on the phone with the accountant. Sorry, mate. We only need one leg for this little multi to pay out. So far, the US government has announced they'll save all deposits from the failed banks without a bailout. Seized bank assets through regulators while the shareholders got wiped out. Sold the banks to bigger banks with government-backed insurance protection. Created new unlimited borrowing powers so other banks stop selling their bonds. Raised interest rates to combat inflation caused by financing overseas wars. So now we sit back and wait for another billionaire to pull their money out of a bank and cause another collapse.
Wayne, you better not be talking to Larry about gambling again.
No, I'm on the
I know
phone.
you're on the computer.
I need to go, mate. She'll have my balls.
Come out here.
No, go, mate, I understand. Sounds like cash in the bag, though, which is a much safer place to put your money right now than a US bank, Brian.
Haha, yes. Great work, guys. And with the British government-owned Bank of England facilitating the sale of SVB UK to the historically dodgy HSBC Bank, that multi is already looking a certainty. Stay with us after the break as INN delves into the brutal world of slap fighting.
And Jane Bunyan with the Intergovernmental Report on Climate Change. Plus, a look into this year's Oscar Awards, where we might see another slap fight prize.
I certainly hope so, Sandy.
The thing about sport is that it doesn't matter how important the news might be. Scams, psyops, politics. The thing people really want to talk about is sport. We create little sporting formations that are real to us. Makes us feel like we've broken away from the mass formation for a bit, even when we haven't. I'd rather invest my time and brain power on sport. Rather than things I don't have to think about. And I think most people feel the same way.
Join INN's #1 sport reporter, Joe Sockick, on INN News.
Joe Sockick is at the Oscars in Hollywood, which is the birthplace of the growing sport of slap fighting that's become so popular with people craving even more stupidity than their devices can provide. How does it all work, Joe?
Oh, it's a fascinating spectacle, and so simple to learn. You get two weirdos standing across from each other, a couple of judges to make sure there's no funny business, and a team of doctors and medical experts to ensure everyone stays alive for 3 rounds of full frontal, face-slapping carnage at a level of schoolyard idiocy that's almost professional. You can't strike the temple, forehead, nose, ear, or throat, unfortunately. And the judges decide the winner unless someone's been disqualified or knocked unconscious.
So the game is to slap your opponent so hard they can't slap you back?
Yep, it's brilliant in its simplicity, isn't it? And the competitors aren't allowed to move either, so injuries can be brutal. Great for all those old-fashioned fans of the biff who've been denied the hard stuff for years by eggheads worried about concussions and traumatic brain injuries.
Ah, yes, like the Dr. Will Smith played in the movie Concussion.
Exactly. Of course, Will Smith made up for it by promoting the sport last year, and most slap fighters start with a brain injury, so there's no need to worry about that.
And they actually get paid to do this then?
Oh yeah, they can make up to 10 grand per fight, so they're training pretty hard. Russia's Vasily Kamotsky trains by slapping out watermelons. Solid Slug in the US slaps out bricks barehanded. And now he hits almost as hard as these ladies. And they all get paid at slap fight championship events promoted by boxer Logan Paul and former Californian Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. No wonder this sport has over 600 million views on social media. Gotta love the modern world, eh? Anyway, onward we march to sports wrap for March. World Athletics has banned transsexuals
It's transgenders, Joe.
who've gone through male puberty from competing in female events. Governing body president Lord Coe has faced enormous backlash for being guided by, quote, the science around physical performance and male advantage. Scumbag. In basketball, and the Sacramento Kings made the NBA playoffs for the first time since 2006, ending a history-making 17-year playoff drought. Of course, they went nowhere again. And the Formula One circus starts again in Bahrain for the opening race of the year. Max Verstappen defeated his Red Bull teammate Sergio Perez and Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso to win the first 25 points of 2023. Well, that's it for sport now, Brian and Sands. Over to my number one girl, the beautiful Jane Bunyan. Hi, babe.
Hi Jane, how's dating Joe going? Yeah, not so good, huh?
He has his moments. Anyway, on to weather, and Australians are either encountering normal or unusual weather, depending on if they've read the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, summarising what humans need to do to ensure a 50% chance of avoiding irreversible climate disaster by 2030. The higher socioeconomic and university educated were feeling particularly uncomfortable, while the majority of others surveyed were kind of indifferent and more concerned about whether they could pay their bills next week. Overseas now, and Cyclone Freddy has become the longest-lived tropical cyclone on record, killing at least 1,400 people and smashing the previous record of 58 deaths by a Freddy set during the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise between 1984 and 2010. The UN blamed the impact of climate change for the devastation that occurred in the African countries of Malawi and Mozambique. Amnesty International suggested that compensation should be paid by rich nations responsible for the climate crisis. However, critics who weren't in formation have suggested floods and landslides caused by deforestation, occurring at rates of over 300 football fields a day, were the primary reason for the high casualty rates Freddy caused in these countries. Between 60 and 80% of the populations of Malawi and Mozambique are currently without power. In general, not because of the cyclone. So at least they're doing their bit to fight the climate crisis for the rest of us, including China and their 1,118 coal power plants fueling their country.
Thanks, Jane. Let's cross back to Hollywood, California, where our very own Bella Calcetti is on the red carpet as the 95th Academy Awards ceremony wraps up for another year. Bella, who are you wearing?
Who am I wearing? What are you talking about?
Who are you wearing? That's what I hear entertainment reporters say on Oscars night.
Oh, well, I suppose the hand is wearing me at the moment. I don't want to talk about that.
Right, I remember Chris Rock was wearing a hand at one point during last year's event. Were there any other random attacks this year, or just the regular boring awards and stuff?
Nah, nobody's attacked anyone yet, but the after parties are about to start, so we probably get some good action later. Everything, everywhere, all the time at once won 7 Oscars, including Best Picture, Actress, Director, and the Screenplay. Michelle Yeoh became the first Asian to win Best Actress in our universe, the second woman of color to win after Halle Berry 21 years ago. A person of no color, Brendan Fraser, won Best Actor for wearing 136 kilos of fat to play an obese gay man eating himself to death for 2 hours. I can't wait to see that one. But the most exciting part of this year's awards was talking about last year, when Will Smith got a standing ovation for assaulting a man at work and then cried in a speech about how righteous he was.
Who could possibly forget that, Bella?
I think some people forget.
Don't forget that.
Well, that's all the news for March 2023, and we hope you've enjoyed watching it.
Just as much as we've enjoyed making it for you.
That's right, so if you'd like to see more, support this episode with a donation at INNformationnews.com. And until next time, may our news be your views, and goodbye.
Goodbye.